mics are dead. All right, welcome. We'll come back at 7:15. We'll reconvene the meeting at this point. We left off at roll call, so we're going to move to item number 4, adopting the agenda. If there are no corrections or additions to the agenda, I would entertain a motion.
I just want to make sure that you guys all saw just the addition for putting the planning commission chair in there was a change to the agenda that got put on base this afternoon.
Do we have to do a chair and a vice chair, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I don't even think that one's on this consent, right?
No, it's on the, it's not in consent because we have to. Right?
You can do it at, Nate, do you know, was that added on, or Kevin, was that added on as a special item?
No,
just in the planning commission. Yeah. So we can do it as part of the appointments for the planning commission themselves.
Okay.
So what are you telling me?
I just wanted to make sure you saw it.
That we need to appoint a
modified 8D.
Yeah, so basically you're going to appoint all the commission members and at the same time also appoint the chair and the vice chair too.
Correct. And we have, because mine won't open up for some reason.
Do we have any recommendations?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good.
And we can go over that when we get to that item.
So we're just, that's going to be part of.
That's part of it, that item.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because on my agenda, it's 8D.
Correct.
It's still 8D.
Perfect.
Oh, it's an action item. All right,
Yeah.
got it. Sorry.
So it's actually it's a revision to it. Yeah.
Then I've already, I was thinking it was an agenda.
No,
All right.
It's amended.
Okay. So, again, we'll go back to, I guess we covered the questions. If there are no other, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wang,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hatfield to approve or adopt the agenda. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries. Moves on to item 5. Is there anyone here for visitor presentation? Anyone? All right. We'll move on to approving previous meeting minutes. Again, if there are no corrections or additions, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wang.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Grah to approve the previous meeting minutes. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. Motion carries. Moves us on to item 7, consent agenda. And for anyone that's uncertain, consent agenda are items that need to be approved, but not necessarily need a conversation. But can, if someone has a question on anything. Any questions on anything on consent? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to approve consent. So moved. Motion by Councilmember Wang.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hatfield to approve consent agenda items. Discussion.
I did actually just have a question. They're going to want to listen to it, or they'll wait till they're talking. I was just curious on 7D, on the interchange project, it just talks about eminent domain, and a lot of properties have been had agreement already.
This is something that we start just because it takes a long process. There may not even be a need for it.
Got it.
But if we wait till the need, then we have to wait another 30 or some odd day. And that would probably, am I saying that right? Or weren't you listening?
I wasn't listening.
That
Sorry.
figures.
I was just curious, like, how many properties, I mean, I know we're not there yet, and I respect.
The question is about the starting the eminent domain question on item D.
I know we're just being proactive, so if we can take, I'm just curious of how many of.
Probably one.
One left? Okay.
Well,
I'm just curious.
there's probably only one on the entire project that we need to, there's only one that's actually a total taking on the entire project. The rest of them are either temporary easements or just easements where we need just a little portion of it. The only property that's a total taking is the house at the northwest corner of 212 and where the new interchange would go. And we're already in discussions with them. They actually don't reside at that house. It's a rental income property for So we started discussions a while ago, but we need to make sure that as we're going through this, that we keep the timeline process going.
Cool. I was
Because
just
isn't there, I kind of was explaining it, isn't there like a 30 or 60-day period to get this in place? So if we wait till the time and then it happens, then then it's another big delay.
It can be up to a 6-month process to do that. That's why we have to plan ahead to make sure that we're at least going through that process. And typically, when we go through these, even if you come to an agreement, you typically will do it under threat of condemnation, because there's a tax benefit to them as a property owner to be able to have 36 months to actually roll something over into a new property.
Oh,
Good. I was just curious on how many were there and how many had come to agreements.
Is that correct, Matt? Okay.
Thank you.
There's about 39 properties roughly in total that are being impacted by the project. But like Matt had said, this really just starts the process, or starts the eminent rate process, reserves the property owner's rights to go through the whole components and for us to continue those negotiations.
Thank you.
all right. Anything else? Otherwise, we've got a motion and a second on the floor for approving consent. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moves us on to item 8, adopt resolution 2019-2, accept the resignation of Councilmember Greg Bowe.
Mayor and Councilmember, the item in front of you tonight is on because Councilmember Greg Bowe did get elected to the State House of Representatives, and they actually get sworn in tomorrow. I think tomorrow at noon is when they get sworn in. As part of that, you can't hold 2 elected offices at once, so he is in need of resigning from his seat. He actually has, he'd be up for, that seat would be up for election in 2020. As the next time that ward is up for election. So there's a couple of action items, or there's an action item that the council has to take when somebody puts in a resignation. The first thing is to actually adopt a resolution that accepts that resignation and declares a vacancy. And so you'll see in resolution 2019-02 that basically the resolution is accepting his resignation as of today, and that you have to declare that the vacancy actually exists at a certain point, which would be January 1st of 2019. So that's the first step that you take. Then the second step is determining how to move forward with actually filling that seat. State statute already lays out a process for that, and it indicates that if there's less than 2 years on a seat, that it automatically moves into a process of appointing a position. So that's sort of the default. If you were to make no decision and to move forward with filling the position, that's a default position that the state creates for something that's less than 2 years. The city could decide by ordinance to actually hold a special election, but there's only certain days that can actually be held during a given year. So here, the dates are established in state statute are February 12th, April 9th, May 14th, August 13th, and November 5th. And with those, you have to have a 75-day notice period to the county to have that. So the only February 12th would be out of the question because you couldn't meet the date. April 9th would only work if there was a decision made tonight. May 14th would be something that you'd have a little bit more flexibility if you're to go that route. Over the past several years, we've had one instance where the council decided not to go with the appointment process and went to a special election process. That was actually in 2010 for the mayor's position when it became vacated in mid-session. We did hold that. We had averaged about 18 to 20% participation by the public in that election. citywide, and that differed by ward, but that was sort of generally the averages out there. And for a citywide election, it cost approximately $15,000, although this would be for just one ward, so it would likely be less than that. I certainly can answer any questions. Like I said, the first action item is really to declare the vacancy, though.
So, I mean, it seems like we should probably just do that. Just
We have to do that, and then we can have the further discussion, but we have to accept that to move forward. So I'd be looking for a motion there. Sorry. Man, that was gone. Looking for a motion to approve Greg Bowe's resignation.
So moved.
And to declare the vacant, or declare the
And
vacancy as
declare-
of the date.
Declare that there's a vacancy. Is that legal?
we all want the same.
So it's all in the same motion. So, so I have a motion by Councilmember Grah,
Second.
second by Councilmember Wang to accept the resignation and declare that there's a vacancy in Ward 2 council. Legal, good? Okay. All right, discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries. So now we can have that discussion about which direction we want to go. And maybe before we start that, I do want to congratulate now Representative Bo.
Oh, as of noon tomorrow.
As of noon tomorrow. But I just want to say congratulations and thanks to Greg for his service to the city. I know he put in, I think it's over 10 years in the council, but then he was on the planning commission before that. So thank you, Mr. Bo, for all your service to the city of Chaska, and good luck in your future endeavor. And with that, we'll move forward. Discussion on what's your thoughts? Or do you have any questions about anything?
What was the turnout of Ward 2 during that election?
That was about 15%
Of just Ward 2?
The special election for mayor, right?
for 2010. Yep.
Is it safe to assume, if you look at the 15K for a citywide, there's some overhead costs, but is it divided by 4 and that'd be a ward, or is it?
I
there's just
wouldn't,
some-
I wouldn't say it's divided by 4 because there's some fixed costs that you have regardless. I think it's probably safe to say that it's probably a third less.
So potentially opening that or leaving that seat open for 4 or 5 months. And
So-
there'd be some impact there.
Yeah, so, and we've had brief conversations with, actually somebody from Luke's office about this. Likely their recommendation would be is if the special election was held out, let's say in May, that they probably would recommend that you actually appoint somebody to that position during that time period, because the state statute does, it says a couple things. It says, first of all, that here's the process that you use when there's less than 2 years, and it also says that the council shall appoint. So the council has an obligation to appoint a position. Now, the stickiness of that is they don't define a time period. I'm sure from a legal perspective, they'd say you need to appoint or you need to get somebody into that position, but there is no defined time period in that. But if you had that time period, I'm pretty certain that from a legal perspective, they would probably recommend that you appoint before you would actually have a special election if you went in that direction.
So if I understand you correctly, you could appoint someone in that role. You could call for a special election. You would appoint someone to serve in that spot until the election. Now that
Yeah.
person could run for that spot, but you wouldn't necessarily put you'd fill out the current council so business could operate and then have the special election pending the outcome. So you wouldn't necessarily we're not looking at 4 people till May. It was, if I understood what you said.
Yeah, that was probably be the recommendation from legal. Like I said, there is no defined time period in statute about how long you have to fill that position. So in practicality, you could leave it open for the entire time up until a special election if you're going to have that.
And if, then how do you go about appointing someone that's running and there's more than one? That gets to be an interesting, because if you put them in the spot, there's always the advantage being.
One of the things that I would highly suggest is if there is, some thought of moving in the direction of a special election, I would highly recommend that we'd have a work session before that decision would be made. Because what I found over time, and we did this, I'll take a step back. Back in 2010, when we had the mayor's position vacated, there was a very similar discussion that occurred. And at that time, before a decision was made, we had a work session. We went through and we sort of talked about the pros and the cons. The interesting thing is that there's a lot of consequences of decisions that you don't usually think about until you sort of think of it holistically. And that's where, if there was a decision or a thought that maybe we want to consider going this way, I think it's important to look at it holistically, because I'd be nervous to give you piecemeal information without having an actual legal opinion from counsel on that, because there can be multiple consequences for decisions that are made, and I think it's important to understand it in the whole perspective. Now, we just went through this process not too long ago. At that time, there was no decision made by the council to go in a certain direction, because the automatic default that the state statute gives is to go to appointment. And so if you don't question whether that's the direction to go forward, you really don't need to take any action. You just really need to provide direction to staff. And the typical process that we've used, and which we used when you were appointed, is we advertise for about 30 days. We get in applications, we go through an application process. There's interviews that they come in front of you. You have an opportunity to basically ask them questions about sort of their philosophies, things like that, and how it relates to the council, and then make a decision. So if that's a direction you'd want to go, you wouldn't need to make an official decision. You just need to provide us with direction as staff to say, go ahead and put advertisement out in the paper. That process, if we went through that, I would anticipate that, we would get advertisement out. So we probably already would miss this week's, because it has to be in the legal section. So we would hit right around that January 15th time mark. So we'd probably have applications completed by the middle of February, which I would anticipate then that second meeting in February, which is, because the President's Day falls on that fourth Monday, would be sort of the time period of when you'd actually make that decision.
I think the curious thing is to overlay that with a time frame for a special election, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so the most likely, if you were to not make a decision today, but you were to make a decision at our next council meeting to move forward with a special election, the earliest you could have that would be the May 14th.
So
But then, and then there should be a period around the same time that the appointment process would have been taking place, is when, the candidates would be submitting, they'd have to submit their intent to run. And then there'd be an open period for them to go campaign, which would be like 60 days or something.
Well, it's a
like that.
75-day period that we have to notify the county. So once we notify the county of a special election, it's 75 days from then until the election can occur.
but then we got to follow the state guidelines of when those elections are. We just can't randomly pick.
Yeah, you cannot. So the only time you can actually pick something is if it's actually declared as an emergency situation, but this does not follow emergencies. So they actually go through each year and they designate dates. And this year, like I said, they designated 5 dates. You miss the February one, you likely would miss the April one. May 14th would be probably the earliest you could do that.
What's the one after that?
August 13th.
I mean, is it, I'll ask you guys, is it more beneficial that we have a work session that really sit down and get into the, where we got all the information and we got the correct information and we know for a fact that then we can make a decision.
Matt, when would we need to make a decision by for the May 14th? Because you said tonight would be to make the April 9th.
Yeah, so we actually would have until January 24th to actually hit the April 9th.
Okay.
So I think so keep in mind, because of Martin Luther King Day, the meeting in January is January 28th, and we actually have a meeting that following Monday as well, which is February 3rd. So I think if you generally aim for one of those two meetings to make a decision, you could still meet that May timeframe.
February 4th is the first meeting.
February 4th. It's basically 2.5 months.
I do want to acknowledge that in the last opening, there was a group of employees who organized and put a petition together, and I think that's appreciative, because I think anytime you get involved with a concern or a need or in the city government, I appreciate all of those. So I do think and I know some of them are out in the crowd tonight. So I do think that's something to appreciate. I did, review all those names, and it's interesting to see kind of that, but I just want to, take the time to applaud those individuals for getting engaged and making sure their voice is heard. And, I wanted to acknowledge that to everyone who maybe is watching for the first time on the millions of viewers at home and didn't realize that there was that about 2 months ago. So thank you for those individuals who brought that forth as well.
I would certainly be remiss with making a decision without feeling I had all the facts and all the options really well understood. This is a pretty important decision. I mean, I know that there's a lot of people in the community who are very passionate about the election process, and this is kind of an unusual situation, but I feel like we just owe it to them, representing our constituents, to do our due diligence, to do our homework before we make any decision.
To answer your question, Mayor, I would, I'm kind of that same boat is, for example, new information fed to me tonight about potentially you could even fill it with an appointment, then have a special election, is something I wasn't aware of. And right, I'm not going to pretend I know everything. And I don't think having a work session delays us to a point. So
Nope.
To me, it is, I think, appreciative for me to make a determination like that. I think a work session is helpful because then we know all the sides. Just my
I
thoughts.
heard a nod over here as well.
Yep, I agree.
So let's just go ahead.
So what we'll do is, we're already in discussion with Larry Harris from Luke's office. He's going to put together a memo that basically sort of outlines the things you have to think about, the things that are consequences of decisions that you make. There's some that, these get into areas where it's even new to me, because you just don't see this very often, and things that even come up as surprises to me as you go through these. So I think it'll be good to have Larry's memo. We'll put together a presentation to go through that. I think one thing we should think about is thinking about moving the interviews for the commission positions to that first meeting in February, and leave that entire time prior to the January 28th meeting to actually have the work session. And generally, I think what we do is shoot for about 5:30 as a start time, and that give us an hour and a half to be able to go through that and have plenty of time to be able to discuss it.
So I'd like to request that in addition to like the legal background and the legal ramifications, and to kind of explore those, that also explore that from that financial side, that, it's like 10 to 15 grants that were in there. Where would that money come from? And, what are we taking away from? Or, how would we generate it?
That's your decision. No, no, because these are, they're unbudgeted dollars when we go through that. Honestly, that's it. In the grand scheme of things, it won't be a huge impact on that. So, but we can certainly address that.
Okay.
We will do that.
Appreciate it.
I know that there are some people in the audience. Is there one or two that wanted to make a comment, statement? Otherwise, I think you heard what our plan is. We're going to have a work session January.
And by the way, the work sessions are open to the public, so anybody can come to those. No decisions are made at those, but they're more of an informative session.
You're the only one with your hand up, sir.
Is anybody else
You- you- But if you are, you have to step up to the podium. Hi, Bob.
You want me to identify myself? Is that
Yes,
important?
sir.
I'm Bob Pershman. I live in Chaska since 77. Want anything else?
Just
No,
your
that's good.
address.
Oh, your address, yes.
112367 Idle Circle.
We have to put your address in the records.
Okay, got it?
Good.
This 200 name petition, I think that sounds pretty important. What's the criteria if you appoint somebody? And also, I visualize people who are appointed, appointing somebody else. And it doesn't sound very American to me. It sounds like something else where the voting is taken out of this. And I don't like it at all. I think that the voters of Chaska vote differently than most of the county. And I think we end up with people in office who are less likely to be who Democrats would vote for. And I don't like that. And you did a great job, by the way, of explaining that. So I really feel better informed than I was before I walked in here. But I just don't want it, and I would like to know about what I have to do in the future to oppose it and try to make it more representative of the people who live in Chaska. And I like what you said, by the way, Mr. Grau. You were I haven't met you, but I really appreciate what you said. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. All right, so we're gonna have a work session on, I already lost the date.
January 28th.
28th, okay. January 28th, and then we'll have a council meeting fall. So, all right. Next item of business is adopt resolution 2019-03, approve the concept plan for Structures, Inc. Doing that, Liz?
Mayor and council members, the item in front of you tonight is something come from the planning commission. This is actually an industrial parcel that's down just to the north of Homes on Revolt Road and to the south of Englewood Boulevard. Liz will be here to talk about, this is actually one that's been in our comp plan for quite a while, guided as industrial, and excited to see an opportunity here. So it's a concept plan that you'll be looking at tonight, which is the first step in the three-step process. It goes through concept plan. They take all the feedback from that concept plan as developers. They put it into the more detailed plan, which is preliminary. And then once the preliminary goes through and comments are made, then it goes through final. So there's three opportunities that this actually comes through the council as we move forward.
Thank you,
Turning
Matt.
over to Liz. This is Liz Hanson, by the way. She's our city
Hi.
planner.
Very nice to meet you new ones here. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. So like Matt said, we're looking at a concept plan request tonight specifically for Structures Incorporated. So the site we're looking at tonight is highlighted on this aerial in blue. It's basically sandwiched on both sides by Riveau Road and Old Audubon Road on the east and west sides. Industrial butts it to the north and Arbor Drive, which is a private drive into the industrial area. And then it's also butted by residential to the south. I did provide a couple pictures into the site just to give you an understanding of kind of how it looks from different views of the property and adjacent properties. So I've provided a view from the east side, looking from Riveau Road, from the west side, looking from Old Audubon Road, and then also from the south side, looking from the residential area. So in terms of a background for this site in particular, it was back in June of 1997 that the East Creek Carriage Homes, which are south of this site, were approved. And during that time, the property in question tonight was platted as an outlot to be guided as an industrial use and to be developed as such. So tonight we're looking at basically the development of that as an industrial use. The company that's proposing this concept plan is currently based out of Shakopee, so they are a current business within the Twin Cities area. They have a current facility in Shakopee over in their industrial park next to Valley Fair. They mainly specialize in big block wall, retaining wall type contracting, as well as paver stone contracting. So the new location that they're proposing tonight here in Chaska will be their main corporate center. They will be moving their business from Shakopee to here in Chaska, so they will no longer have that facility in Shakopee. They plan to have 18 to 20 office employees and then 2 shop employees as a part of this new facility. So here's an existing survey of the property today. So the total acreage for the property is roughly 5.25 acres. It's currently being used as agricultural, so it's being farmed today. There is a holding pond that's on the south side of the site that you can essentially see in this exhibit as well in terms of where it's located. Another big existing piece on this property is there is a 120-foot wide NSP highline easement on the south side there. So that basically encompasses those large transmission lines that segment the property.
Is that the dotted lines on there?
Correct. So basically this line and all the way south contains that easement. Like I noted, they do have double street frontage on Ravo Road and Old Audubon Road. And then Arbor Drive basically intersects this property and the industrial property to the north, which is private and provides access to the property to the north and the one in the back on the north side as well. So specifically what they're asking for as a part of this concept plan is a new industrial office building on the site, as well as an exterior storage yard, which I'll show in some exhibits later on. The exterior storage yard would basically be to store their raw materials for the business. This would include their pavers, their big block pieces, and other base material. The equipment that they'll be using back there will mainly be with bobcats and a larger truck and trailer that will do deliveries and pickups of those materials. They only have 2 shop employees that will be handling those pieces of equipment, and they've envisioned that the truck and trailer component will only be utilized 2 times a week. So in terms of the industrial use that they're planning out there, it does meet the guidance for this parcel and the 1997 approvals that were done. So here we have a basic sketch on the site and how it lays out within the parcel. So the way they have it laid out right now is they're showing 2 accesses into the site, one from Old Audubon Road, kind of towards their southern boundary line, and then another access was proposed on Ravo Road, providing access into that exterior storage yard component. So the storage yard is mainly oriented on the west side of the site. The building is shown hatched out in black here on mainly the east side, which is basically in line with the other industrial buildings to the north of them. Parking is shown proposed on the east and south sides of the site. They are also proposing a pre-finished 8-foot fence, mainly along the perimeter of the exterior storage yard and on the southern boundary, which is shown in white on this exhibit. They did include a picture of the type of fence that they'd like to do, which is kind of more of a qualitative pre-finished fence that we find today.
What's the height of that? Oh, 8 foot.
8 feet on that. In addition to that, they would also like to line the outer portions of the fence with a crimson spire landscaping component to help with kind of the buffering of that.
Can they plant under that easement?
There's going to be some limitations, which
Yeah,
we're
'cause
still
they
trying
just
to
went
figure
through and
out.
Cleared out a lot.
Yeah, height's going to be a big thing in terms of how high they're going to be able to go with some of the vegetation out there. I've also included some photos of their existing facility in Shakopee, just to give you an understanding of their storage yard and kind of what we're going to have to continue to address as we get through the preliminary process. So the central image is a Google image of their storage yard. So they basically have compartments of raw material organized off and then other pieces of storage out there as well. Most of their area is screened with vegetated fence. At this location, what we're proposing at ours is a little bit different. It'll be a kind of a mix of vegetation and fencing to screen that component. In terms of the building, the size of that will be 15,000 square feet. The majority of it at 10,000 square feet will be for office and the corporate function of the business. The remainder, 5,000 square feet, will be for the warehouse and shop on the back side of that, which would help store the equipment like the Bobcats and other pieces that may need maintenance done to it. The storage yard, again, is on the westerly side. It basically will encompass even the areas that are shown in green here, basically go all the way back to their westernmost boundary. They have indicated that the storage that they'll be doing back there won't exceed 7 feet in height. So with the 8-foot privacy fence back there, it will provide an additional foot of coverage to that area. They are showing kind of a couple of ways of paving the exterior storage yard. For us as staff, the entire storage yard would have to be paved. It can't be raw open ground for the storage of the materials, just for maintenance purposes and aesthetic purposes. So they may do your traditional pavement, but they may also look into a pervious paver option as well to help with some of the runoff and drainage on the site. They've also included a picture of the Crimson Spire that would locate next to the fence and offer an additional height to the overall screening back there. I guess in terms of staff's perspective, we do favor that option to kind of offset the hardness of the fence, but also provide year-round screening with some coniferous species options kind of mixed in with that. So we'll kind of work with the applicant on the landscaping, getting it to a point where it would provide that full-on coverage all year round. And as it relates to landscaping, in addition to that, being that this is an exterior storage yard, we are very sensitive to the fact of what you see from the residential to the south. So we'll have to work with the applicant on some of those sight lines, cross sections of how the residential will see it, and how the landscaping proposed will be able to screen that particular area. So it may be a mix of berming as well to create additional height out there with the vegetation. So with the easement and kind of the tightness of the site, it will be a challenge, but we can certainly work through some creative alternatives to accomplish that. Some of the building setbacks that will have to be met, and luckily with the easement in place there, it does account for the most significant setback that's applicable to the site, which is 100 feet from the south. So industrial properties do have to provide a 100-foot setback from residential properties for the buildings. So the buildings have to meet that setback. So the easement line back there basically accounts for that setback for them. The storage yard will also have to meet building setbacks. So as they come through preliminary, we'll have to see that noted on their drawings.
The storage yard isn't 100 foot too, is it?
They would have to meet that 100-foot setback. But again, since that easement is there, they're basically meeting a 125-foot setback. So they are meeting it with that in place. In terms of the building, their main design option or theme to the front side of the building was to make it look more residential, so that as you're kind of transitioning down Old Audubon Road, going southerly, that as you're passing the industrial buildings, it'll kind of flow in nicely with the residential buildings that you start to see down that road. So the front is more designed to be more of that residential component, and then the back or the shop area will kind of have more of that industrial feel. So they're proposing to use glass, stone, eaves, and metal cladding. They'll have to meet our building design and materials ordinance for industrial buildings, which require 30% class 1 materials. In addition to that, they'll have to provide 360-degree architecture for this building, since they do have high exposure on Ravoux Road and Old Audubon Road, but also to the south facing the residential. So that is another piece that we'll continue to work with the applicant on as they come to preliminary submittal. They've also included a floor plan of the building, just to show kind of how the corporate office layout is inside, and then how the shop is oriented to the west of the building there as well. So something I didn't get too far into, but maybe I'll go back here, is the overall layout of what they're proposing out here. We definitely, as we reviewed this, saw some concerns with some of the access pieces proposed for the site. So the access on Ravoux Road, this is mainly a residential road. The other industrial properties do not have access onto this road. So we have made a condition to eliminate this access altogether, so that trucks will not be using this road to access the storage yard. We have also advised and encouraged the relocation of this access point to be off of Arbor Drive. As you can even see on this drawing, Arbor Drive does encroach into their property, so we have to assume that that was kind of set up to provide the initial access into the site. Plus, it'll provide a bigger buffer between some vehicle movement between the residential to the south to be farther away if it's on the northern side here. So the applicant has been amenable to these changes that have been requested to see if they can orient the parking on the north side there and the initial access into the site and the storage yard on the west side there. So they are working on that to see how they can reorient the overall site plan to accommodate that.
Is that currently, that's not a city street, is it?
What one?
That one on the north side?
No, that one's private. So there's currently a driveway or maintenance agreement on there for the industrial properties to the north. So they would have to, with the existing property owners, come up with a new maintenance agreement and driveway agreement on how that gets maintained and handled over time. Now that 3 sites would be utilizing it. So I know they've been in discussions with the adjacent property owners on that as well to get that amended and put together to accommodate this new site. So things that they need to work on with the preliminary submittal. So again, the concept is basically meant to kind of absorb all of the information and proposal that they have so far and provide some concrete feedback back to the applicant to work on for their preliminary submittal as they put together more detailed plans. So one thing which is pretty customary from going from the concept to the preliminary is building design and materials. So they'll have to provide specifics on the types of materials, specs of the materials, and the overall application on the building during the preliminary to show how it meets our building design and materials ordinance. So that will be a piece that you'll see more information on during the preliminary submittal when this comes back. I touched on the overall layout, and advisement and conditions of approval that we've noted in our report in regards to the access points. So again, the applicant will be working on that as they come back through for preliminary. So working out kind of the details of the orientation of that, but also where there's other opportunities to help provide some screening mechanisms or providing more space for that on that south side and potentially outside of the easement so that they have room to work with and not a lot of limitations because of that. The screening piece is going to be a big component as we come back for preliminary of this exterior storage yard. We do allow for these components as long as they are adequately screened in the most optimal fashion that the site allows. So that could be berming, fencing, landscaping, or a combination of the three. We've seen these three being the most adequate pieces to implement for screening mechanisms in other projects. So we'll continue to work with the applicant on figuring out the best approach on that. So by showing that, they will need to provide cross sections of the site and how it relates with the properties to the south. And another big component that we'll need more information on as we go to preliminary with an exterior storage yard, there is that component or concern of noise and what type of noise generation is going to be created as a result of this. They did provide some brief information during this concept plan submittal, but being that it was a main concern of the neighbors at the Planning Commission meeting, we'll definitely need more of a detailed noise summary during the preliminary to understand everything that's at play there.
They're an 8 to 5 business though, right? So it'd be just daytime. noise?
Right. So they would only be operating from Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay.
So pretty in line with typical business hours.
Right, because it's industrial all around there. If they're hearing noise, they're hearing it from them already anyways.
Right. So just getting a better understanding on that as we get to the next step in the process. So with that and where they're at during at this concept plan level, there are things to work on, but definitely not things that'll break the request tonight. So we are asking you to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2019-3, approving the concept plan for structures incorporated based on conditions that are listed within that. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I know the applicants are here as well if you have specific questions for them.
Questions, anyone?
Do they have neighbors near their existing site in Shakopee?
I believe they're an industrial park,
Oh, okay.
so they're completely surrounded by industrial properties, not residential.
That's fine.
It does seem like it, but the residents to the south, when I was actually put my feet on the ground there, that property they're pretty close together. So as ensuring the priority is there for the, what they're looking at. I mean, they're already kind of looking at industrial, but ensuring that as it encroaches and is closer, maintaining that priority, which it sounds like is in the plan. So,
Right.
And that fence does extend all the way.
Yes.
Looks like based on the white. Okay.
Yep. So they want to put it all along that southern property line, which would help. They just have a couple setbacks that they need to meet in terms of sight lines, but they'll have it all along that southern property line.
And the current discussion is that, potentially, adding some berming to some of that too,
Right.
in addition to that. So they'd be like, so would the fence be on top of the berm or under the berm be offset from the fence?
It might be
Don't really.
at this point, we don't know
Still
for
working through it,
sure. We still have to see what kind of space
Yeah.
we're dealing with. Because I know they need so much space for the storage area. So we'll need to see within the easement area and the area around
So,
that.
but
what we
in
can
the
work
easement
with.
area, they can actually move, they can move dirt around and push stuff into the easement, even though they just can't build on the easement.
Right.
Right.
You can't have buildings within it. You can't have pavement within it.
Yeah.
But you can
fence.
have vegetation, I think.
You might be able to, there's vertical clearances that you have to deal with.
Right.
Right.
Whether it's landscaping, berming, whatever, you can only have stuff so close to the power line, so you
Right.
have to be
Yeah.
sensitive to that.
What's
But
the
that's
height
a
of-
piece that gets worked out in the preliminary
Yeah.
components.
Out of curiosity on the company, how many employees, jobs would be in that building?
In the new one,
Yes.
they will have 18 to 20 office employees and then 2 employees for the storage yard.
And is
shop
that
area.
a growth? So they're building it
I
to
think that's
grow
at full
more?
potential,
Full
right?
potential?
Full
Potential.
potential.
How many employees do you currently have?
On the office side, it's about 10 of us right now, about 32 employees.
They're saying 10 for everybody watching at home.
Yeah.
They can't hear you back there.
10 office, 30 field employees.
Any other questions for Liz? Pretty straightforward. Owners, did you guys want to say anything? Just state your name and address, please, for the record.
Daniel James Andersen, 3540 Montgomery Avenue, Deep Haven. I'm the architect on the project. So a couple things I want to address. Is it left and right key?
Yep. Use that.
So keep in mind on this easement right here, this spot right in here. So our intention is not to, is that the beginning?
You have to go.
Other way. Okay, our intention, so in the planning meeting that I attended, there's some concern with the neighbors right down here, okay? They're right there. Some of those homes, if you actually pulled up the dock, they're like right there. We are not putting a fence here, nor would they want a fence there.
Right.
That's gonna be a hard, like the front of this desk, a hard surface, and that's not gonna be, any kind of fence is obtrusive, no matter how nice it looks, it's gonna be industrial looking. So we're wanting our fence to be, for one, let me back up, this isn't gonna get flipped. So we are gonna come in here, this is not gonna happen here. The parking lot's gonna be less than this, because I don't need this much parking. I only did this because we had to get back here anyway. If I flip the building around and I come in here now and scoot this back just a little bit, because I've got 100 feet from this line, which is approximately right there. Now our parking lot's over here where it should be. So the intent of the design of the building is to be only tall enough to kind of blind our shop space. So it kind of wants to kind of come down and be the height of the residential. So there's no need to come over here and do a fence all the way over to here and to here. Well, that's not our intention. That's not what we intend to do. We want to take it from the corner of the building here and come across and have the fence over here. That way we're going to have better sight lines for these people. And with our berm, we're not talking about a berm like you would normally see. It's a flat berm. So maybe underneath the power lines, it comes up 6 feet, 5 feet, whatever that number might be. And then along this property line where the coloring stops on the green, right here, we do the spiral products like right over here, but year-round growth, so it's got color. In a perfect world, we have the fences for security anyway, but you kind of want to not doing it kind of obtrusive looking fence. You kind of want to put that behind have some greenery in front of it. So this should be pretty thick here with greenery here and coming around to here. Not concerned about this. Don't intend to do any landscape here because that's industrial. So the fence would be from the corner, just for the lot. Because back here now, mind you, this is going to be still set back further than right here. This building, when it gets flipped, it maybe goes to like right here because I got to meet this line here. That's actually more green. This is more 150 to 180 feet to the back of our building. So it starts to get long, which is what they're going to want. And we don't want to blind that with a bunch of fencing. We're trying to make the architecture of the buildings be quite nice when it comes to the actual design. And if you look on the design, you can see this is a sketch. So that kind of what it's going to look like. But if you look at a scale, you can see that this angle right here is that. And this here is this. So you can see we're trying to cover the industrial from the sides and the front. So you only really see it from the back. And the nice thing on the back is it's quite far from this street, and so visual. That's why this is your landscape, this is your landscape. You build that berm up. We'd rather not put the fence on top of the berm and bring attention to it. Bring the landscape to bring the attention to it. That's a softer delivery from residential to industrial. That makes sense? Everybody?
And that's one thing that the staff and plan commission will analyze when they look at it. It's hard when you don't have the drawing right in front of you, but we'll be taking a look at that and see what makes most sense from the neighbor's perspective.
And the last thing I've got to comment on is, we like this product, this is our business, which is kind of like this. To blacktop this entire piece, that puts an enormous amount of pressure on runoff. And it's not necessary, it's not required. It really shouldn't be required. There's no need to blacktop, you know, all this back here. Because this will come back like you can't believe it in this system right here. And we have, you know, probably blacktop and concrete like in this zone right here, because that's where you're kind of coming in and out of. But just, you probably want to consider how much of that you want to have all. I mean, that's a lot of art cover. So, yeah. Any questions I can answer?
You guys will be talking. They'll
Yep.
come up, they always have come up with a solution, so.
Yeah, no problem. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming to Chaska.
Got about 5 minutes of game, we're about to start. Our next one.
Who's playing tonight?
Clemson, Alabama.
Hey, now. Andersen, 3540 Montgomery,
You've already been here.
Alabama, and Crimson.
Got
We
it.
don't care about the other guys.
16-14.
Hey, thank you.
Alabama. All right, thanks, guys.
Cool.
All right, anything else? Again, this is a concept. A lot of talking to happen yet.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll make something work, so.
No, I think this sounds like sounds like they're moving in the right direction.
Are there any neighbors?
Yeah, but I already said.
You're liking what you're seeing so far? It's early. Okay,
Still gotta work some stuff out.
All right. Good. all right, good.
Yep. So
Thanks for being here.
sounds like you're moving in the right direction. I generally like the idea of offsetting that building as close to the other ones as possible, but sharing that driveway from that north seems like it's a better use to keep the parking and other traffic away from the residents. So, and increasing that green space in between the residents, as you indicated. So, I think that, moving forward, that evolving that concept to that next phase, it seems like it's the right thing to do. Absolutely. Thank you guys for coming to Chaska.
All right, what's your thoughts?
Make a motion.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilmember Wang,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hatfield to adopt resolution 2019-03 approving the concept plan for structures. All right, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Moves us on to item 8C, appointing a acting pro tem for the calendar year 2019.
Mayor and council member, a number of years back, I believe it was 2008, the city established a process by which mayor pro tem is chosen every year. That is something that's required by state statute to be somebody that steps in should the mayor be absent, so from a meeting, or if he's unable to do his appointed duties. This is sort of a unique situation because the policy that we established
Seem to be saying that a lot.
the policy that we established said that we'd rotate by wards, and but you had to have at least 2 years, and then if you didn't have that, it'd be by seniority. So
wins by 2
Mike
weeks.
wins by seniority by 1 meeting. So our policy would be, if we stuck to our policy, would be to appoint Councilmember Wong to the mayor pro tem position. And then after that, once we get sort of into the swing of things, then we do decide it each year, and that policy applies each year. So that the decision, at least the council had made at that point, is that they wanted to see that position rotate each year, so that each council member had an opportunity to do that. So,
I just want to make, because I received a question today on this topic, so just to make it crystal clear. State statute is that a pro tem needs to be appointed.
Yes,
The city's policy is what Matt was just describing.
yes.
You know,
Yeah, because
the
we had
seniority
for
piece,
a
there's nothing in
number of
statute
years,
about
we
that.
had the same mayor pro tem for, what,
30 years.
Yeah, so we had Councilmember Lindahl was mayor pro tem for almost 30 years. And then when he retired, so that actually would have been, I think, 2006. That's when the council had actually made the decision to adopt that policy.
What's your attendance record?
Wait,
Wait, I don't know where, you should be asking that question, right?
I haven't heard coughing or anything.
I'm
so-
always here.
Anyhow.
All right. Any further discussion? Not, I'd entertain a motion that we appoint Councilmember Wang as the acting mayor
So moved.
pro tem. Motion by Councilmember Hatfield,
Second.
second by Councilmember Gra to, what is it? Is there a number? Nope, just appoint acting pro tem for calendar year 2019, which is Commissioner Wang.
Don't deny me, okay?
Don't what?
Don't deny me, okay?
Oh, it's escalated.
Might be gone right away next month, so. All right. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moves us to planning commission appointments.
Here, council member, each year we go through the process of appointing new or reappointing existing commission members to each of our commissions, our Planning Commission, Park and Rec Board, HPC, and Human Rights Commission. Tonight, we are just recommending that you take action on the Planning Commission. That is one that has regular applications, so we do have statutory time deadlines that we need to meet. And so it'd be good if we get that filled. This is probably the most vacancies we've had on the Planning Commission ever. And
Since the first appointment.
yes, so we wanted to make sure that we address this right away tonight. As you'll see, we do have 6 seats. 4 of them are regular positions. 2 of them are alternate openings. And we have, out of the 10 applicants, we had 1 incumbent, Susan Cross, who's actually asking to be considered for the final of, you can go a total of 9 years, so it's 3 3-year terms before you have to take a break. In addition to that, we're also recommending that you take action on actually appointing the chair and vice chair of the Planning Commission. At the last meeting, the Planning Commission did have a discussion about who'd be willing and able to be in that position and who the Planning Commission would recommend. They did recommend
Brian Dalton.
Brian Dalkey as chairperson, and his names are slipping my mind today. Missy Bovey as the
Vice chair.
vice chair. Those were the recommendations. Now, obviously, the council can make the decision of who to put in it, but those were 2 people that showed a willingness and were interested in it. So again, there's 10 people. Just so the audience knows, there was 10 interviews that occurred today between 5 and 6:40. And so everybody had an opportunity to talk with the council and be interviewed. So with that, I would suggest that you make the appointments for the regular positions first, and then with the alternates, indicate which one is the first alternate and which one's the second alternate, because that makes a difference in how they actually go through voting.
Right. Yep, and, can I go?
Yep.
I'd like to make the motion. So I would like to make the motion, since we had discussion on this already.
Yeah, we did the,
So we did the interviews. So this isn't, I'm not just pulling this out of thin air here, and we all talked about this. So that we would reappoint Susan Cross as the incumbent, and as the regulars, we would have Carl Lacey Sr., Bob Brass, and Aaron Saylor.
Rob Brass.
Oh, sorry, Rob Brass and Todd and Aaron Saylor. And then his first alternate would be Todd Urbanski, and second alternate Travis Olson.
Okay, so that was a motion.
That was a motion.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Wang to appoint, again, I'll just go Cross, Lacey, Brass, Sailor,
Yep.
and then alternates of Urbanski and
Travis Olson.
Travis Olson. So discussion. No, I have a motion second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hatfield. Well, I'm going to forget names up here with you guys. You know that. So just be patient with me.
I still call him Mayor Ben Isles.
Mayor, yeah. Gary's only been gone 12 years. So, well, you get those nights where you just can't get nothing out. Ask Matt, he just had it.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussion on the planning commission members?
I would just thank everyone who came forth. It's appreciative when people take action and want to be involved with the city. For those that weren't named, I'd encourage you to look at the other openings and if you're interested this year, next year, or future years to continue to do that. It's I served on the park board. It was a great experience. It's a really fun way to get involved with the city. So I appreciate those who came out and interviewed and took time out of their night to do that.
And we have openings usually every year, so.
Yeah, and there's
don't
multiple
be-
people who aren't being appointed tonight that actually gave a second choice. So we'll be getting them set up with interviews for those actual commissions then.
All right. Good?
Yep.
All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Post same sign. Motion carries. Moves us to bills.
Chairperson and vice
Oh, no,
chair.
Yeah. Sorry.
So
So our next action would be to making a motion to have Brian Dalkey as the chairperson and Misty Bowe. Is it Bowe?
Bovee.
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 So having served with,
Go ahead.
so having served with all said, I'd be my honor to make a motion to appoint Commissioners Dalkey as chair and Commissioner Bovee as vice chair.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Wang, second by Councilmember Wang. Did I call you Commissioner?
I'm not sure.
Council member, whatever your title is, to appoint, again, Brian Dalkey as the chairperson and Misty Bovee as the vice chair. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Post same sign. Motion carries. Now it's bills. Anyone have a question on any bills? If not, again, I'd entertain a motion to pay the bills.
I motion to pay the bills.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield,
Second.
second by Councilmember Wang to pay the bills. Discussion? Hearing none. Nate, will you call roll?
Yes, Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong,
Yes.
Councilmember Grau, Mayor Winchell.
Yes. All right, moves us into other business. And I think you guys have seen this. It just gives you an opportunity if you've got any concerns from constituents or something you just want to bring up. It's an opportunity to share that right here. So I'll start with Councilmember Hatfield.
I do not have any.
Nothing, okay.
Yeah, I do have something. So with the recent completion of Highway 41 between Hunter Mark and Pioneer Trail, I know this happened like during the fall, so there's like the plan is to continue to do foliage and more plantings and things like that in the springtime. But there's a number of residents who are somewhat unhappy with the noise level right now. So I wanted to bring up the concern that they raised about potentially about the landscaping and when that's going to happen, if they'll have citizen representation on the planning working group, because I think that they had indicated that there was some commitment that was made to the residents about that.
Yep. So a couple things. First of all, with the landscaping, there is actually a representative.
Yeah, he came to the meeting. I don't remember his name, but he said,
You've worked with him.
Ed Driscoll, right?
Driscoll.
Yes. Yeah.
he said that he would work with it.
Yeah, and he's actually been a part of there's been at least a meeting out at his site to go over that. So there is a representative from the neighborhood that's been a part of it. But to us, and I put it in the biweekly report, there's other issue that we want to make sure that we address prior to the landscaping is making sure that the noise is at the levels that the preliminary, they put together models when they do these to put in factors and determine what the noise level will be, and that how many properties actually meet a threshold of actually meeting the cost benefit analysis that MnDOT sets out determines whether or not they qualify for a wall or not. So what actually happens after the fact when the project is actually done, it's obviously a lot better information because now we know exactly what's going on. So we are in the process of reaching out to MnDOT to request that they do a restudy of the noise to see if there's been any changes. Because we are getting reported that there's more, if you remember back when we did that project, the comment that was made at the time was that the increase in noise would be imperceptible. I don't think that's what they're experiencing. And so really going and the only way to do that is and have any certainty about what's being experienced is to actually go out and get data. And so they're not terribly expensive to do. We are recommending that the city actually contribute half of the cost of doing that because it's not a typical process that MnDOT would do to go back and do it, but we think we can get them to commit to that to go back and do it. Beyond that, in the landscaping, there's been some requests, let's say that they didn't, nothing changed from what the initial study was. They've made requests that, looking at different options other than the landscaping that we had proposed, which might be a better solution. So we want to look at this more holistically and use this winter time before we'd actually do that landscaping project to come up with some better data.
Well, did they take noise? I assume they took noise data before this started, right?
They did, but the models that they do assume what's going to happen after the project is done.
But I mean, they have what it is now, and now we can see what it is.
Yeah, so we can compare that
Yes.
to the data that they modeled. It may not change it, but I think when you have, we want to make sure that there's commitments that are made at the beginning of these projects to say, if it's going to be imperceptible and people aren't perceiving it's imperceptible, to me, that's an issue that we need to check out.
I mean, even things like we've seen in the past, like with 212 when it was built, like the construction of certain buildings and structures or walls had the reflective properties.
Yeah.
And so noise that came from that ended up getting reflecting, amplifying across into different neighborhoods that we weren't expecting to. So
Yep.
yeah, definitely.
So it's easier to have those discussions if we're looking at real numbers instead of
Right, speculating.
speculating.
Then just figure out.
Especially it's different in the winter because the vegetation's
Right.
gone.
Yep.
And so. Yep. And everybody, it's kind of like, you got a cut on your finger, you hit it every time you do something, or, it's just like this. Now it's new, and you gotta get, like you say, you gotta get the real numbers and go from there. So. All right, anything else, sir?
Nope, that's it.
Jonathan?
I had two things. One, actually somewhat connected to that construction. Just point out the interesting article about why the speed limit signs on that road are covered up. They're doing a speed study. So I guess the clarification question that I was looking for, if you knew, is it's still 50, is my understanding based on the article that saw that the speed limit. Are they looking at slowing it down or speeding it up, or we have no idea? It just seems very weird. I've driven by that sign wondering why it's covered up and kind of.
Do you
And then
want
I
it to
saw
go
the
up or down
article.
is the question.
That's it. That's always the interesting thing in speed studies, because a lot of times people will request speed studies assuming that it's too fast and they'll go down, and they find actually that it's actually should be higher. And so you never know exactly what's going to happen with those speed studies until they're actually done. But the state actually has a formula that they use to determine what should the speed limit be based on design. And also they look at the average of what people are actually driving. So they look at behaviors on the road too.
So it'll be 65 before long.
Yeah.
So if you want it slower, drive slow.
Yeah, if you
All
want
right.
slower, drive slow.
Good to know. Sorry, just curious on that. And then
John's gonna be driving up and down
Yeah.
the road at the speed he desires.
Yeah, I think Luke's right, it's like
72nd percentile, I think.
72nd percentile. Yeah, so like 2/3 of what the average is what they set the speed at then.
The nearest 5 miles an hour, not to exceed the design speed.
Yeah, most people tend to drive what's safe on a road. Yeah.
And then my second item, and I think this was talked about maybe 2 meetings ago. I was just curious if we've had any luck on. I think this is a MnDOT issue as well. It's the Quick Trip
Mm.
Pioneer Trail situation. After I was out in the crowd 2 meetings ago and mentioned I drive it every day because I pick my son up at that daycare, and I wheel through the Quick Trip parking lot and go to the far exit and take a left. I do notice, I think is new, they put flags there so you can't cut across.
Theoretically.
Theoretically. Is there any, are we getting their attention to look at?
It's
that?
actually Carver County.
Carver County.
Yeah, and which actually helps because, they're here and
Yep.
we can talk with them. Yes, that's a temporary solution. That is an issue. And I've had some visceral reactions from like good friends of mine about how upset they are about that. It's not working now. It's very clear it's not working. And so they are looking at a permanent solution of what to do there. But they won't be able to implement that till next spring or summer.
That's all I had.
Matt?
We don't need to take action on this tonight, but I do want to point out in the biweekly, there's 5 committees that typically
Oh,
council
yeah.
members have
Thought about that.
had representation on, and typically people have done it based on their interest, or maybe it's something that's within their ward or things like that. It would be helpful for us, especially by the second meeting here in January, so the January 28th meeting, to have you guys give some thought to what committees you might want to be on. And maybe the easiest way logistically to do this is maybe email to me. Don't email to everybody. That's open meeting law violation. But email to me what your interests are, or what your top interest would be for a committee. And let me see if everybody gets back with where there's no conflict. And if there isn't, I can look at sort of where maybe put down a first and a second interest.
Be honest about your second interest.
Yeah, because you might just be on there.
Just
But
went through that.
that might be the easiest way to coordinate it, so that we could don't have to spend too much time discussing it. But if you have any questions, I tried to put a general description of what each group does. But if you have any more specific questions about it, feel free to give me a call. But these are all groups that are sort of standing groups that are out there. For instance, like Community Ed is meeting tonight. And they don't have a specific time frame. They go based on what works for people within the committee. So, and then just a reminder, meeting schedules for January and February do change. So it's the 4th Monday of January, 4th Monday of February instead of the 3rd.
Because of Martin Luther King and
President's Day. Yep.
All right. Anything else?
Nope.
Cookie?
No, nothing other than welcome all the new people here, and as the mayor's going to let you know often that I've been around here for a long time. And if you got any questions, feel free to call me or come in and talk to me.
You wouldn't believe what this guy knows. I mean, 1968 to now, 50 years.
Yep.
A long time.
It is. It's older than some of you council people.
That is accurate.
Than most of us. I think there's only 2 people in the room that are.
Liz and who else?
Yeah.
Could be.
That's awesome.
Starting to hear grandpa pretty soon. All right. Kevin, anything? Nate?
One thing, so January 21st, Martin Luther King Day, the Human Rights Commission is hosting a breakfast in coordination with Southwest Metro Chamber to do that. So this will be the 2nd year that that's being hosted at the Event Center. That'll start at 8 o'clock, and it's free and open to anyone who's interested in coming. So the intent is to really kind of celebrate community and celebrate Martin Luther King and his legacy.
Are they honoring the Human Rights Award winner from this year?
Yes, that's right.
So
Yep.
that's Libby.
Yep.
Wait, it was a surprise. No.
Yeah.
Who won it again?
Libby,
Oh, yeah,
Libby
that's right.
Fairchild, yeah. So that was decided at the
remember
last
that.
Human Rights Commission meeting, that she'd get the Human Rights Award. And so she was chair for the Human Rights Commission for a number of years.
Good choice. Yeah, that's new that we're doing that at the Martin Luther King. It's never been, we did it at the hometown holidays, and it's maybe not always been the best place, but I think this will be a nice place to have that done, so. All right, that leaves me, the only thing that I'm thinking of, next Saturday, Southwest Christian High School is having a grand opening of their new addition. I think it's 1 to 3 and then at 3 o'clock.
Ribbon cutting.
Little ribbon cutting. Then there is gonna be, they're gonna have a half-hour service.
Yep.
Right after, so that is open to the public as well, all are welcome. I've been in the school itself, it's a very nice school, so I'll be curious to see the big new addition that they're putting on, so. Again, all are welcome, 1 to 3. I think that's, we retired a firefighter today with 22 years. Scott Gerber retired from the fire department. So congratulations to Scott for his years of service here. It's a big commitment, 22 years.
He's also fire chief up
And
in,
he's the fire chief in Excelsior, so he keeps him plenty busy, but he stayed on probably longer than most expected, so it was good. I know he was a good mentor for Chief Weeby, so congratulations, Scott, and thank you. And lastly, before I close, I just again want to welcome all three of you. It takes, a friend of mine always says it takes courage to lead, so you are here, and it took courage to be here, so you guys all had a run in the race. Most of us did.
You ran one once.
But congratulations and welcome. I think that you'll find out that this is a exciting and fun experience. So got any questions, feel free. And we're gonna have some education things. We have to figure out what we're gonna do with that fourth person yet. Yeah, once we do that, we're gonna have a bunch of education pieces. But in the meantime, if we miss something or something doesn't feel right, just let us know, because we're kind of waiting for that, and so you don't have to duplicate it, but
there'll be sort of two things. There'll be training that we go through, but there'll also be, we'll want to get on the calendar our annual retreat too.
annual retreat. And probably, well, can't even make a guess right now at this point, because we don't know where we're gonna go, so.
Yep.
But anyways, welcome aboard, and thanks for stepping up to the plate, so.
I apologize in advance for the multitude of questions that I will ask each of you over the coming months.
You only get one. All right, anything else? Last call? All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wang,
Second.
second by Councilmember Hatfield to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Post same sign. We are adjourned. We'll see you
28.
January 28th.
5:30.
Before we go off the air.
5:30.
5:30.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
work session.